Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 10-11 jungle tier list. As always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the rest of the content as well. We stream every night starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till about 4 or 5 or 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till 4 or 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So nighttime stream. Come by, check it out. Wonderful, friendly community. I try to be explain as many things as I can during the stream, but also, to share some old man stories and talk with the chat, and it's just a really fun community. So come by, check it out. And then we also have tier lists just like this on the channel for every patch. We have topical guides, how to macro better, how to micro better, best one tricks, dodging guides, just itemization guides, just all sorts of stuff on the channel. Coaching sessions. So come by, check it all out. It's a really good time. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Be sure to check out my Warhammer announcement page as well. I do talk about I'm doing the league tier list and jungle patch on there, doing the support tier list tomorrow, and then I'm gonna start releasing coaching videos every day around 3. I've got a big backlog of those that I need to get out there. And then I was also asking if people would be interested at all if I did any like Magic the Gathering online content for the channel, or any other games, any other strategy games like XCOM or Civ, or anything else like that. It'd be fun to do those things. It would never replace the league content, but I just got to make sure that it's worth my time if I, invest in that and put out the content for that. So if we can get a decent little following for that, that would be kind of fun. And if you are interested in Total War Warhammer at all, I am doing a stream today at 2 p.m. that's sponsored by Colt. With the Kotep. So it's a really fun game. Come by, check it out if you're interested. And then I'm releasing a lot more Warhammer stuff as well. But none of that affects League. If you're just interested in League, still going to be the same stream time every night, and I'm going to start releasing more content for that. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So patch notes didn't shake up a ton. I do think that they made Fiddlesticks extremely strong, and we'll talk about that here right off the bat. But as far as everything else, I don't think the meta is going to shift too much. I do have an entire patch notes video, so be sure to check that out. I will talk about Volibear a little bit more today. I talked about him a lot in the patch notes. Fiddlesticks, huge buff, though, to him. If he stands still basically for 2 seconds and then ults, he can hit multiple targets. That's the big kicker with that. And then the huge one is his Bountiful Harvest now does an additional like 30% damage. It might even be 50% more depending on how the proportions work out. But basically his W, the Drain, used to only do 40% damage to minions, and now it's going to do 60% damage to minions. So I guess that's a 50% increase in damage to minions. So pretty massive for wave clear. And this has me a little worried that he might actually become viable in the mid lane. And if he becomes a flex pick between like mid, jungle, and support, he's being played in like at least some in like challenger Korean support, I think. Then he's just gonna get banned, or he's gonna get nerfed a lot. So I'm a little worried this is too over the top. But even as a jungler, it's gonna help you out a lot, because sometimes you just need to clear lanes, right? Like your mid laner roams, you get stuck middle trying to clear out that lane, or you're trying to push to get dragon priority, or just whatever's going on. Having more wave clear is really, really nice. So that's a good change for Fiddlesticks. Graves, as far as the jungle goes, is getting nerfed a little bit. That's just on the first shot, not on the bounce back. So it's a little bit of a bonus damage hit. However, I think the most popular Graves build doesn't stack a ton of AD. You obviously get some. You get Warrior, that matters. But then you get like Cleaver, which just has like 40 AD on it. And then a lot of times I think people are going like Death's Dance next, which is only 50 AD. So, like, AD does scale really well on him, and is still going to be really good, but it says this is affecting his lethality build, which I don't think that's his most common build. It might be. But I still think he's going to be super strong. We'll talk about Graves later. And then Hecarim, I don't think this is going to matter. Hecarim's big problem is that, like, the itemization and runes just don't make a lot of sense on him right now. He usually goes Cinder Hulk into Trinity Force, but those don't have very much synergy with each other at all. Cinder Hulk is really only good if you need the wave clear in the jungle, or if you're going to be getting a lot of other high health items so that you get that percentage to kick in. Because by itself, without its passive, it's only you're paying 1,500 gold for about 950 gold value worth of health. So it's really, really gold inefficient. And he doesn't need the wave clear because he has his Q that can already clear multiple waves really quickly. And Trinity, like I said, doesn't have that much health on it, and it's a super expensive item. So it's just like no synergy there. And just a lot of other champs are going to come online earlier, or they're going to scale harder. He's if you can snowball early off of ganks, you can get that Trinity, and you can really start, you know, power spiking on those ganks kind of early. But then he falls off later if he's not super far ahead, just because his scaling is awful. Like, his Q doesn't have a very big AD ratio on it. There's a little bit. His W is magic damage. His R is magic damage. Has no AD ratios on either one of those. And his charge has a small AD ratio, but it's mostly based on how fast you're going with that rune. And so I just feel like he's okay, but his just numbers just aren't going to be that great until they adjust it and give him either bigger AD ratios, or if they make like his old physical damage instead of magic damage, then he could go lethality to help him snowball early. So he could get something like a Ghost Blade, which would be awesome for the movement speed. Obviously, with his E, it'd be really big hits. So if you could go something like Warrior and a Ghost Blade, he could become like a hard snowball champion in the early game. But I just don't think the AD ratios support that right now, especially since his W and his R are magic damage, which doesn't benefit from AD and doesn't benefit from lethality. So I don't think this is going to change his position that much. I could be wrong about that, but that's rough. We'll talk about Kai'Sa later in the video too. I think this could potentially open her up jungle Kai'Sa again. I don't know. We'll see, but like, this Q bonus missile damage is actually pretty significant in the jungle, and if you can get Warrior, I believe that'll allow you to evolve your Q off of just Warrior. You might need an additional longsword, but that would open you up to be able to go something like Warrior into Blade of the Ruined King, which is really strong right now. So you could skip the whole Manamune Gensus and just come online a lot faster, because the big thing about Kai'Sa and a lot of these tier champions, I know everyone's building Manamune on everybody these days, is it takes forever to charge. Like, mana is just not a stat that most champs need in the early game that are building the Manamune. And yes, it is cost efficient. It only costs 2,400 gold, but you just don't need the mana on Kai'Sa most of the time. It's cute, it's nice, but you don't need it. And it takes a very long time to charge to get to Mirror Mana. Usually it's going to take, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to charge that up. And so you have a really huge weakness in the early game, and that gets exploited by a lot of junglers and a lot of laners. That's a big problem. And then Gensus requires prep. Like, you have to be able to auto-attack minions or monsters or whatever to set up your Gensus, and then come in doing a lot of damage. So if you were to go something like Warrior into Blade of the Ruined King, that would allow you to trigger, and then I think if you have Blade and you get Berserker's Greaves, that might be enough to transform your E. I'm not 100%, but you could get Nashers after that, or you could get Hurricane. Remember, Hurricane does apply the Blade of the Ruined King damage on each bolt. So that has really good synergy with Hurricane. So you could just transition into Hurricane after you get the Blade of the Ruined King. Sorry, the cat's always trying to dig into this cheese. You could get the Hurricane into the Blade of the Ruined King, and maybe that would be good. So I don't know. It's just a thought. Maybe it doesn't work. The fact that they extended the range on her Killer Instinct means that you could follow up with damage a little bit further at level 11. It doesn't matter at level 6. But I think that that could be a possibility. I mean, this percentage, AD percentage damage increase is good, but it would be even better if you got an actual AD item like Warrior early on, instead of goofing around with Mirror Mana and Gensus and just being really weak for the first 20 minutes of the game. So, I don't know. That could be a new paradigm that could work, especially with that buff to that ratio. That'd give you pretty good wave clear in the jungle too. And then I'm trying to think of what else would be jungle. The marksman changes are okay. It does give him a bit more health, so it is going to be a little bit tougher to gank him in the early game, but I don't think it matters that much. I don't think any other ones are going to be viable in the jungle. Twitch, people try him. Having a little more health would help with that, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. Now, solo lane, you are going to see probably a bit more Lucian. Early game Bully, that's a massive buff to Lucian that I talked about before. But this isn't the patch notes video. I don't want to spend too long on that, but just be sure to go back and watch that. But he's going to be a bit stronger. Callista's going to be a bit stronger. Vayne's going to be a bit stronger, which is kind of tough for tanks, but I think tanks will still be in a good spot. And then this stuff just really doesn't matter that much. I mean, 2% movement speed, you know, on your second item. Yes, it will help Yasuo out a little bit. It'll give him like 5 more move speed or something, but maybe 7 or 8 more movement speed, but it's probably not going to impact the meta that much. Okay, so let's talk about, now that we just really quickly TLDR'd like 5 minutes, the patch notes. Let's talk about the junglers here. So I think that Fiddlesticks is going to be #1 overall right now. Now, he was already the highest win rate jungler, and I've been playing Fiddlesticks a lot on the channel. There are some challenges that are even playing him. I know that Pansar Dragon is really well known for playing him right now, but I think a lot of other junglers are going to start picking him up. He's very, very strong right now. So what is it about Fiddle that makes him strong? Let's pull him up just here real quick. Spend a little bit more time on the top 5 picks, but I don't want to spend forever. I do want to try to get through this a little bit faster. I know it's always a meme on the channel, but I'll just hit the highlights for you. So the biggest stuff that you need to know about Fiddlesticks is he has really, really good vision control. You get free wards, basically, from early on in the game. Now, once you get to level 6, they also sweep an area for 6 seconds. So it's not like a permanent control ward. It doesn't cancel the vision on the wards. It disables the traps. Oh, it does disable wards. Okay, so it does disable the wards for 6 seconds. But then after that time, then it just functions as just a normal effigy. But the big thing about this is this helps with invades. If you put this up like on your pixel bush in one of the rivers, it'll see a lot of the invades. And it lasts for quite a while. It doesn't say how long it lasts here, I don't think. But it lasts for like 2 minutes at level 1, and it feels like you get one every 90 seconds. And then as you level up, you get it faster and faster, and it lasts for longer and longer. So it's very, very good that you basically get free wards, lots of extra vision control on the map. Is huge, especially because he relies so heavily on vision control to work properly. He has kind of it's the standard fear here that people are used to. It's a long duration fear, but it actually does do some magic damage, so you can feel comfortable in the mid game leveling this up. Usually you do 3 points in your drain, and then you max out your Q after that because it still does good damage, and it has a longer CC duration, so you get 2 seconds. And the big kicker here is you can actually fear multiple targets with your ult. So if you're invisible and you roll up to a fight, it fears everybody that you hit with your initial ult. So if you ult into like 3 people, they all get feared for the fear duration. They all get feared for the 2 seconds. They don't all take the 10% damage, but they do get feared. Now this says if he becomes unseen for 2.5 seconds by any enemy champions, that includes on wards, then they all get the dread and they all have the fear. But they did change this to an effigy. Okay, so the ult doesn't work with the effigy. So basically, if you stand still for 2 seconds, then he becomes unseen, and then he can fear him again. So if you stand still for 2 seconds, like in a fight, and then you do reap, then you can stun it, or you can fear everyone again for 2 seconds. So I'll have to work that into the rotation, but that could be pretty good. And I don't know if they can't be terrified again. I think there's a timing window on that. Because if they've been affected by fear for so long, I know you can't cast Q on them again. Oh, on target cooldown. Yeah, so you can't fear the same target again for this duration. So if you already feared people, then you can't get multiple fears off. So getting the E with when you're in effigy stance would be kind of weird. Basically, like if you're sitting on a ward or something, you can still get the fear off if you wait for 2 seconds. And then you hit them with like a reap, or you could like stand still in the middle of the fight. I don't know. It's very, very situational. It's probably not going to happen a ton. But anyway, so you get multi-target fears, which is the huge thing later on in the game, and then you still have your point-click fear. And if you've already feared them, no problem. You can do 20% of the target's current health. So it's pretty good. Or if someone didn't get in that initial fear, so if you fear 3 people, off of your ult, but you didn't hit their ADC who's on the back line, you can walk up and still terrify their ADC for 2 seconds if you just point-click them with it. So it's very, very good CC, very good early game ganks if you can get around him. He is a little slow. I think he's only got 335 move speed. But if you do get behind him, then, he's very, very brutal on ganks. It's just a huge CC chain. You get 2 seconds, up to 2 seconds there, and then your E silences them for 1.25 seconds. So that's up to 3 seconds without them being able to flash. So that's obviously going to be huge. Another big thing is his clear. Specifically, you can clear multiple camps with Bountiful Harvest. So you can clear like red plus Raptors at the same time. You can also clear blue plus Gromp at the same time. So you can multi-clear camps, even level 1. You can clear Raptors plus red level 1. So you get a really, really fast clear. Or you can start Wolves and then clear blue plus Gromp at the same time. You want to make sure you start wolves if you're starting on blue side, because the Gromp is not going to spawn for the first 10 seconds or like 10 seconds after blue spawns, and you want to be able to clear them both at the same time. So you actually stay kind of healthy doing this, although if you do get invaded, that's going to be really bad. So that's kind of the toughest thing with him, is if they have a hard invade champ and they just really commit to messing with you the entire time, like a Nidalee, a Lee Sin, something like that. If they come over there, you have to just give it up, run away, and go do something else, because you can't really fight people early on, which kind of sucks. Now, you can fear them and run. So I would suggest holding your fear up, especially in the early game. I know some people just spam all their spells on the camps to clear them faster, but it's really not that much faster, a little bit. But just spam Bountiful Harvest and then hold on to your fear just in case you get something goofy like a Lee Sin flashing over a wall at you or something. You can fear them and run away. And that's what I think. Unless you're very comfortable and you know where they are, I would hold that fear if they could invade you. But anyways, clears multiple camps, heals you up, very safe, does a ton of damage later on. You know, that last tick does up to 22% of their missing health in addition to the 45 base. So it's going to be really, really strong, and heals you for quite a large percentage. So typically 3 points in W, like I said earlier, and then you max your Q in the mid game, so you have that maximum duration for AoE fears. Reap is okay. It's not as good as his old E, I don't think, especially for team fights. You just kind of do it for the silence. This is the last thing that you max, so doesn't really have good AP scaling, has a small slow on it, you know, has a small silence on it, fairly long cooldown, so it's okay. You pretty much just chain it together with your fear just to make sure they sit in the full Crow Storm without being able to flash out of it. So it's okay. It's not amazing, but it's alright. And then the Crow Storm itself, pretty much the same thing that it's always been. 800, basically blink range, and just does an absurd amount of damage, right? 225% of your AP, and even at level 6, it's 625 base damage. So it's pretty much a one-shot if you get this on people, and it comes with its own mobility, so it can blink over walls. So I think this is one of the most powerful ults in the game. If you take Ulti Hunter with this and just stack a bunch of CDR, especially once you get to level 11, this thing is up almost permanently. It's like a 45-second cooldown. So extremely good ultimate. This just makes or break Fiddles, obviously. I mean, it's basically if you land this and they get feared, anyone that touches it's gonna die. Unless they're just like the tankiest of tanks with like 200 magic resist, they're gonna die. Unless it's like Mundo or something. So extremely powerful for picking, extremely powerful for team fights. Just very, very good. So I think that, the combination of he has really good free vision control with his Harmless Scarecrow. He has excellent CC with his Terrify and his Reap. He's just a nightmare for assassins to deal with. He naturally itemizes into Hourglass because you can engage fights even as a squishy champ with your Crow Storm. Hourglass, it'll completely win the fight by itself, but then the Hourglass obviously very good against assassins as well. Really good clear with the Bountiful Harvest. Just tons and tons of damage on his scaling. He's just, he's pretty OP, honestly, right now. And the biggest thing, like I said, when he was released, I didn't think he was going to be that great, but the biggest thing I was overlooking is the potential for the AoE fear on the ultimate. Just absolutely tremendous, and I just didn't envision being able, like, how fast he can multi-clear the camps in the jungle, too. So you can get to 6, like, really quickly. I mean, you can comfortably do 5 camps and have time for a gank if you see an opportunity, and get the scuttle on time. Like, it's that fast. And you're going to be pretty much full health when you come out of your jungle after doing 5 camps. Like, it's disgusting. It's so good. So just avoid the enemy jungler at all costs early on. I usually start on the top side of the map, path down to bottom, because 90% of junglers and most ELOs start bottom because they get the best leash and go top. So most of the time you can avoid most invades like that. And just get your scuttle and then, either gank or go take their raptors if they're a champion that doesn't do raptors early on. So he has a lot of opportunities. So yeah, his clear is 5 out of 5. I think his ganks are 4 out of 5. Like I said, he's a little slow, but if he shows up, if he gets behind you, it's really, really difficult to get away from him just because you have so much CC. Dueling is terrible. I think I'm going to take that down to a 1. Like, you really can't fight hardly anybody in the early game. Scaling is awesome, just sort of off the charts, like damage scaling. I mean, it doesn't get much better than 225% on an AoE ability. Now, yes, your E doesn't scale. Like, your other abilities aren't that great. A 0.7 on his W is not bad. But the other abilities aren't that great. But just the ultimate itself, which is one-shot entire teams later on. And then reliability, I just have as a 3 just because it does take a lot of prep. You have to be there early. He's primarily a counter ganker. I mean, you can use him to gank, but the best situations are where, they're trying to gank your mid lane or something, and then you fly in with your ult and turn it around and kill them both. So that requires a little bit of forethought. Now, I have changed my stance on this. I think Electrocute, I had been running Predator just to get around and get some ganks in earlier. But the problem is if you use Predator, it gives that little announcement to them, right? They get the little icon over their head, they hear it, and they know that you're around. So that just kind of defeats the whole purpose of running with Fiddlesticks. And then I think that Ulti Hunter... Yes, you do get item actives. Yes, you know, it does interact with your trinket and give you more vision control if you go for Ingenious Hunter. But really, you just want as many ults as you can get off in a game, because every ult is, if you're doing it right, is pretty much a guaranteed at least one kill and sometimes multiple kills. So it's very, very strong. You want the ultimate up as much as possible. Cheap shot, you have a lot of CC, so it's really easy to get those cheap shots off. Even your E, the silence doesn't count as CC, but it does slow them for 1.25 seconds. So even if for some reason you're like you fear one person and get a cheap shot off, and then you need another cheap shot later, you can do Reap. So it's pretty good. You just get all kinds of opportunities for cheap shot. Eyeball collection, if you're like a challenger, you can do Zombie Ward, but I just think people don't, like, you can't leverage that enough, because most of the time when you're gonna, because you can't get a sweeper, so most of the time when you spot their wards, you either have an effigy there or you have a control ward there, so it just creates redundant vision. When you get the Zombie Ward, it's like, okay, like, you have 2 wards in that bush now, or like a ward in your effigy. It just really doesn't help. Versus, like, if you're a champion that runs sweeper, then Zombie Ward can give you more vision coverage. But I just wouldn't do it. I just go with eyeball collection early on. And then I'm actually going to switch off of Nimbus Cloak and Transcendence. That is a good build, and I do see a lot of people doing that. Some people also will do Absolute Focus instead of Transcendence, just to give you an even faster clear early on, because you are going to be healthy most of the time. It does give a lot of extra AP, so that is good value. But I've been doing the perfect timing for the stopwatch, and then Cosmic Insight. So I really like this because it does give you a relatively like free early game stopwatch, so you get one nice use out of it for a mid game team fight before you end up getting Hourglass, and it does drop the cost of Hourglass by 250, and that's a really clutch item on Fiddlesticks most of the time. It's got CDR, it's got everything that he wants. So that's really clutch. And then the Cosmic Insight is just a free, 5% CDR on your ult, 5% CDR on your smite, because it's on your summoner spells, on your flash. Flash is really important as Fiddlesticks as well. And 5% off of items. And typically you do get, that does affect your trinket, but that also affects your Hourglass. That comes offline more. And then I've been doing Proto Belt a little bit more lately. And it's kind of a situational item, but I think that it is really strong. So I've gone off of the Oblivion Orb. Yes, you can do Morellos. If they have a lot of healing, it's good. And yes, it is kind of nice early on. Like, having that spell pin does give you a bit more punch. But, it's very expensive. That's the main thing. And if you can just come online and just snowball faster, you already pretty much overkill squishies with your ult. Like, damage is not the problem most of the time with Fiddlesticks. So getting that Oblivion Orb is okay, but it doesn't have CDR on it. It doesn't have any like cool actives with it. And so I've been going like Zhonya's into Proto Belt. Proto Belt is so nice on him because they're going to be feared. You're going to hit them with all of your bolts. It adds a lot more burst so that they die before they get their flash back up a lot of the times. And it just, like, the ability for you to gap close, to get a bit closer to them, to reposition your ult is really nice in team fights. But also, if someone's just out of range of like your fear or something, you can Proto Belt in, get in a range, and then cast your fear on people that are like running away. And it's a pretty low cooldown. Also helps with your wave clear incidentally. So if you have to go like clear a side wave or whatever, you can Proto Belt the wave and then drain it with your W, and that'll clear it out. So it's just a very versatile item. Yes, the AP is not that high on it. Yes, you don't need the health that much. It's sort of whatever. But it's a very cheap item. It's only 2,500 gold. If you get the discounted Zhonya's, I think that's like 2,350 gold. So that allows you to cheat the curve and just come online really fast with a lot of hard-hitting items. And you're not stuck waiting around, with like pieces of a Morellonomicon or pieces of a Leandries. I've tried Leandries out too, which is all right. You do have a lot of CC. It does add the damage. Once again, damage not as important as CDR, not as important as some of the actives like the Zhonya's active and the Proto Belt. You really just want that CDR on that ult. You just want to ult on cooldown every 40 seconds. Someone's dying. You're taking something on the map. You're snowballing your advantage. And then Void Staff would just kind of be at that point what I would get that late in the game. Because people like the flat pen, if you're not rushing Oblivion Orb, it's kind of a weaker item. If they do have a ton of healing, on their team, maybe you could consider going, Morellonomicon. It's still a good item. A lot of Fiddlesticks still get it, but Anyways, you have several options on him, and I think it can be good. This stuff is standard, like I said, the Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, all that stuff. A lot of people do like the Nimbus Cloak and then either Transcendence or Absolute Focus. I think Absolute is more popular, but I really like this one as well. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So Fiddlesticks, super strong right now. Nunu, I still think is really good, and some people give Nunu a hard time, especially at higher elos. There are some like high diamonds, masters, even some challenger people that play Nunu sometimes. You don't see him a ton in higher elo, but I think that he's exceptionally good. I mean, he's always good in like gold and lower, platinum and lower. He's almost always top 5 jungler, and there are several things about him that make him really strong and really make him unique and stand out amongst a bunch of the other tanks. And I think you'll notice, with the exception of Fiddlesticks, a lot of the top end champions are these kind of bruisery tank champs that are just really solid, that can either fight or have a lot of CC in the early game. But first of all, Nunu does get around the map really well. He has 345 movement speed, and that snowball mechanic with his W does allow him just to get back to places quicker, just to get back into the jungle quicker. Ganks are extremely good. He's probably the best early game ganking tank out there, especially if you take the scuttle and then you come off of the scuttle with that movement speed. That applies to your snowball the entire time. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that whenever you start the snowball, then I don't know where it says it, but you stay the same, like it uses that speed modifier for the entire snowball. And he keeps all movement speed buffs for the full duration of the charge. So you come in so fast off of that snowball that it's really, really hard for people to get away from that. And it's such a massive hitbox. Half the time when they flash, you still hit them with it. So it's a massive ganking tool. It does pretty good damage. You only get 1 point in this for most of the game, but it's still 180 base damage with 150% AP. You don't usually build AP on him, but that's a lot for a 1 point wonder. So it's your mobility. It allows you to gank super well. You can even come up lanes a lot of the time with that snowball if you have enough movement speed. So I think he's going to be really strong in that respect. The other thing is consume, especially at lower elos. This is so massive for securing dragons and barons, because a lot of times, even if you get like 1 or 2 kills, like your team can go contest dragon, sure, or go like can try to do a baron, but if their jungler's up, a lot of times, you know, the supports at that level of play or just the other people aren't helping you zone the enemy jungler enough. They're just going to sit there and just auto attack the baron, and they're not going to step out and zone the jungler. Or sometimes maybe it's just really hard to zone the jungler. Maybe it's dangerous. But if you have consume plus smite, you know, in the mid to late game, that's going to be between 1,500 and 1,000 true damage, and nobody's going to beat you except for maybe Cho'Gath with the Chomp Smite. Cho'Gath's extremely rare these days, so it's guaranteed. Like, you can't miss it unless you get CC'd at the exact moment when you're about to chomp them, which is very rare. I miss, like, consume plus smite. I miss, like, literally 1 out of 100 of those. It's extremely secure. And people will flash in there and try. So, like, the Lee Sin's going to flash in and try to outsmite you. It's not going to happen, and you're going to get a free kill off of it. So you're just pretty much guaranteed to get every objective that's like a 50-50 on a Baron. Turns into like a 99-1 on a Baron or a Dragon. So that's extremely powerful, especially in an elo where there's all sorts of just skirmishes going on, and you will get advantages. You might be up 1 or 2 people, but their jungler's up, and it's just too scary for a lot of junglers to do it. Nunu can do it. Right, so that allows you to just get a lot more objectives than most other junglers could. He also takes them really quickly. Like, he does dragons really early, so if you see the enemy jungler gank top, you know, and you're level 4, level 5, and you got your skirmisher saber, you can go down there and take that dragon super fast, and very healthy too. So even if they like roll up on you a lot of the times to try to contest you, usually you can just run away and get out of there if you have to. Or, I mean, if it's already kind of low, you're going to guarantee it. So yeah, maybe you die, but you get the dragon or you get the rift or whatever. So I think that's super good, and it just keeps him very healthy in the jungle. Like, he clears pretty fast, not as fast as like Fiddlesticks, but, you know, a lot of times you can clear, you know, 5 camps and still get there on time to the scuttle. You might be like a little later. I think his clear is maybe like 5 to 8 seconds or so slower than like Fiddlesticks clear, but you're still going to be pretty healthy when you get there. And you can contest. You know, you can go up and just steal it from them with a Chomp plus Smite. And steal the scuttle, or you can just avoid them. If they have a really scary jungler, you can avoid them and go a different direction. So you don't have to have blue early, you don't have to have red early. You can gank early if you want to with the snowball. That works really well if someone's overextended, or you can just, power farm it up and, play for a dragon early if you want to. And so he's just very versatile. And he brings a lot of utility to the team too. Not only does he have multiple slows and CC, he's got his ball, which knocks people up. He has his snowball barrage. He has his ultimate. His passive even gives him extra bonus attack speed and bonus movement speed, and it gives it to the person with the highest attack speed. So that'll give it to your AD carry usually. And giving your AD carry 10% bonus movement speed on a Vayne or something and 20% attack speed is obviously going to be really, really nice. So that's good. The Snowball Barrage itself, which is what you level up second, does a surprising amount of damage. I mean, look at this. The base damage on this per volley, total damage, 432 damage if you hit him with all the snowballs. And each time you hit him, it's a 1 second slow. Like, what is that damage? It's so much damage. And it applies a 50% slow for 1 second. So they're going to be slowed, for up to 3 seconds while you do 432 damage to them. And if you hit them with the Snowbound, it does a little bit of extra damage. Not a lot, but it does have a nice AP ratio on it. But then they're rooted, for an extra second or so in the mid game. So they're slowed for 3, rooted for 1, and you just did like 500 damage to them. So that's very, very strong. So even if they like dash or flash or dodge part of it, you can still follow up and get some more on them. And then this ultimate kind of gets a bad rap. It's a low cooldown, but it does so much damage. I mean, that's Fiddlesticks level damage, right? 250%. It's almost the exact same thing, at least at the early levels, with 625. Now, the difference is you have to fully charge it, so they can flash out of it, they can dash out of it, but it also slows them the entire time and gives you a pretty nice health shield, 30% of your bonus health. So that's a lot. You have 1,000 health, that's a 300 shield, plus the, like 75 or 375 shield. So it's just really powerful. It's really useful. It just makes you a total pest in fights. You can release it early to do a certain percentage of the damage. But yeah, it's just so hard to dive through a Fiddlesticks to get to that, or to dive through a Nunu to get to that back line. He's just going to gum you up. He's going to be difficult to kill. He's got a lot of CC. He's just tough to deal with. And you can get a lot of utility items too if you want. I mean, it's very common to get like Dead Man, Spirit Visage, Cinderhulk, your standard fare. But if they have a lot of AD and they're killing your ADC, you can get Knight's Vow. Why not? I mean, he's already going to be pretty tanky. He likes the health. I wouldn't necessarily run something like a Zeke's. I mean, I guess you could do something like that. In theory, if you have a really fed ADC, you could also run Ardent Censer. You don't see this a lot, but if you take Font of Life in your tree and, you're just surviving a lot as a luxury item, you wouldn't want to rush this, but as like a 4th or a 5th item or something, you could do Ardent Censer. He does have AP ratios. It's pretty good. He does have self-healing with Consume. So he would get benefit from the extra plus healing and shielding. And obviously, if, anyone that you slow that gets auto-attacked by anybody on your team because of Font of Life is going to gain the Ardent Censer buff. So that's going to give the Vayne on your team, the Yasuo, just whatever out there. It's going to give them all the extra attack speed and on-hit damage. So that is an option if you have a tank support who's not going to get Ardent Censer and your AD carry's just going off, then you want to help them snowball, you could get Ardent Censer, and that could be a thing. So it's not likely, but it is on the table. It does work for him. And then you can also do Leandries. If your team's just not doing enough damage and you're snowballing super hard, you can go Leandries on him. And once again, you have AP ratios. It has health on Leandries, 300 health, not bad. That's about as much health as some of the other, tanky health items out there. It's in the ballpark. Now, obviously, it doesn't have resistances on it, but because you apply so many slows and potential AoE slows to multiple people, then you will get that Leandries burn very often. And like I said, the AP ratios aren't bad on him. People don't get AP because, they want you to be tanky. But, it's not terrible. Base healing from champions, I guess, 56% AP. The damage is 50%, so it's not huge on your Q, but, the E's pretty big. The absolute focus is huge. So you do have a lot of options on him. A surprising amount of variety where you can get a little damage if you need to. You can get some utility with Knight's Vow or Ardent Censer in some cases. So you have like a lot of sort of specialty boutique items that you can use to adjust to the game state. And you do have your standard build as well. Now, I don't like Frozen Heart on him. It has Frozen Heart. I have tried it. You really want stuff with health because the health just scales so heavy on him with his Consume. the damage that you deal and the health that you heal off of consume, and then also your absolute zero scales off of bonus health. And because you're getting Cinderhulk, that also scales off of bonus health. And he doesn't need the mana. The big problem with Frozen Heart on a lot of champions is you're paying like 600 or 700 gold for mana. So that's a lot, right? Yes, it does have a lot of armor on it, but I would just much rather get Thornmail. I think Thornmail is criminally underrated in a lot of situations. It is a bit more expensive than Frozen Heart, but it does give you health, it does give you armor, and it also gives you Grievous Wounds and the Cripple when people are attacking you. So, anyways, Nunu, versatile, very strong tank, early ganks, Dragon secures, Baron secures, really good scaling, great utility for your team. A lot of people think, oh, if you don't just end the game early with Nunu with your snowballs, then there's no way you can win. It's like, yeah, there is. Like, you can start fights with your snowball later on in the game. You get tanky as hell. I mean, if you really want to go full tank, you can get like a Gargoyle Stone Plate as well. So I think he's extremely good, especially at Gold and lower. Now, why might you not play him in Challenger? Well, he can't fight other enemy junglers that well early on. He's better than Fiddlesticks. Like, he can get away from stuff, but he can't really skirmish that well. And that's kind of what's going on in the meta right now at the top end. But nevertheless, I still think he brings a lot of utility and he's very strong. So just Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, Revitalize, or Unflinching if they have just a ton of CC. Unflinching can be a good choice. Triumph Tenacity and Triumph if they have a ton of CC. And then Cheap Shot and Ravenous Hunter. Cheap Shot, you can get a lot of those off. That does help your early game. And then Ravenous Hunter does heal you for a lot as well. So there are a lot of different options you can do with him. Also in pro play, people are going to be looking on the mini map for that snowball or like challenger play. So they're going to be like watching for the snowball. They're going to be playing around it, and they're going to like save their cooldowns to interrupt it a little bit more, because you can interrupt the snowball with things like Soraka Silences or like Syndra Orbs, Anivia Walls, Trundle Pillars, things like that. So your engage can be disrupted a little bit more in more highly coordinated play. But he's still going to be a powerhouse, especially at lower elos. Pretty simple to play too, for the most part. It's all, you just have to learn how to like curve the snowballs depending, because the curvature changes depending on your movement speed. So you got to know how to hit certain snowballs, when you have different levels of move speed, when you have dead mans, when you're coming off of one of those scuttle shrines or whatever, versus just normally. And so that can be a little weird when you're getting used to it, but overall, very strong champ. Highly recommend him. Okay, Volibear. So this is new Volibear. I do want to keep this video under an hour, so I'm not going to go all out on that. Watch the patch notes video if you want the full rundown on Volibear. I'll release that. It's going to be out at the same time that this video is released, so the first like 20 or 25 minutes is all about Volibear on that. And once again, I'm not just trying to say, go watch my other video. It's just I want to make sure this is under an hour and I can talk about most of these champions at least a little bit here. I do think he's going to come in on the strong side early on, and I think there's a lot of kind of like weird builds you could do on him. Like, he does have really good AD ratios, but I think he's just mostly going to be a bunch of stack HP, right? It's going to be Cinderhulk. Now, one item that I think will work really well on him that you don't see on a lot of other tanks out there is Sterix Gauge, and I went ahead and pulled up Sterix here. This is a very, very cost-efficient, powerful item if it's used on the right champion in the right context, right? And the cost analysis here doesn't take into effect the value of that health shield. So if we look here, we just do some cost analysis here. Let's say that, you have, I don't know, by the time you get Sterix, you're going to have Cinderhulk, you're going to have, maybe some runes that'll give you a little bit of health. So you'll probably have about 1,000 health if you go for Cinderhulk's Sterix. So the bonus health off of that is 75% bonus health. Let's say that you only use like a third of it. Like, you run into a fight, they break it. It only triggers when you already take a ton of damage. But you get a big shield for it. So even if you're only getting like 500 gold value out of that, that's still going to be giving you about 1,300 gold value. And then you have 450 base health. So that's giving you effectively almost 1,000 health if you consider that shield in a team fight, right? Now, it's not health in the sense that it's going to scale with your abilities, but it's going to make you really hard to kill with that shield. And the shield also gets around Grievous Wounds. So if they like to get Grievous Wounds against Volibear, which will be very common, then you still get like really good value out of that shield because Grievous Wounds doesn't affect shield. So you get that plus this at 1,200 plus 1,300. It's going to be about 2,500 gold. value there. And then you get the AD, the 50% of your base AD. Now, in the mid game, he's probably going to have about 80 AD. That's a conservative number. But even if you only get 40 bonus AD off of that, times 35, that's 1,400. So now we have 2,500 gold plus 1,400 gold is going to be 3,900. And that doesn't include the tenacity. You also get 30 tenacity whenever this goes up, and you increase in size, which makes it difficult for people to click around you to click on the squishier targets because your hitbox is going to be bigger. It makes it easier for you to block skill shots for your team and stuff like that. So it adds a little bit of value that you're bigger, but really it's that 30% tenacity. And I don't know the exact value on tenacity, but it's probably at least a few hundred gold value there. So you get all that divided by 3,200. You got 121% value on a defensive item, which is really good for a big ticket item that's not a support item. So that is something that I think could work because he does have good AD ratios. So he does leverage the 50% attack damage. You gain it as bonus attack damage. It used to increase your base damage a long time ago, and it worked with Trinity, but now it's shifted over to bonus attack damage, so it doesn't work with Trinity as well, but it does work with your abilities that scale with bonus attack damage a lot more. So like his Frenzied Maul, for example, is 100% attack damage. His Thundering Smash is 120% of your bonus AD. Your Stormbringer, if you land on somebody, it's 250% of your AD. So I don't think you're going to get a lot of AD on him. You might see like a Death's Dance or something as a later item. I guess it's possible you could see something like Black Cleaver. This does do physical damage with the Maul. I mean, maybe you do see like a Cleaver Death's Dance on him. The Thundering Smash is also physical damage, I believe. Your Sky Splitter is magic damage. Then your ult's physical damage. So he does so much physical. I guess maybe Black Cleaver could work on him. You don't have a lot of ways to proc it like really quickly. Like it's not like Graves' Buckshot, which each little pellet, all 4 of those pellets proc it. So it would take a while, but it would give you a phage, so you could stick to people a bit easier. It obviously gives you a lot of health. It has some AD on it, and it's going to give your team the benefit of that armor shred, even if it's at a slower rate to apply it. It's still going to give you that shred. So I don't know. Maybe you could go Cleaver on him. I still think it's probably going to be Cinder Hulk in a Deadman's, just because he wants the movement speed so much. Now, some of the most notable things about him that are new are his Thundering Smash, where you run at people. If they end up immobilizing you, so they do a little knock-up on you or a stun or whatever, it resets the cooldown. So now if you're running at Syndra, she hits you with the orb, okay, you're stunned, but then once you wake up out of that stun, you can press it again and get a new 4 seconds. Or like you're running at Janna or something and she hits you with a tornado, press it again, new 4 seconds. So it's going to make him so relentless, especially in the open field. It's going to be almost impossible to run away from this guy. And you don't do the flip, but you do have a 1 second stun, and I believe it says pounces. I'm not sure if that's a lunge or a dash. If it is a dash, then that could work for sudden impact, so that you get the extra lethality and things like that. If you want to run in the red tree secondary, run like sudden impact plus Ravenous Hunter or something like that, which could be strong. I mean, you might still see him with just your standard Nimbus plus Water Walking, but if it does work with sudden impact, it could be a good thing. If it doesn't work with sudden impact, I guess you can still do Cheap Shot. He doesn't have as many slows or as something like a Nunu. You'd probably just want to do the Nimbus Cloak Water Walking if sudden impact doesn't work, and I'm not sure if it does, because like with Udyr it doesn't work, but there are other champions that have a little dash like that where it would work. But it just depends. I don't know what pounces mean. That's not a technical word there. This calls it a dash, but I don't know if the wiki's correct. If it's a dash, it works. If it's Udyr, where it's a lunge, or it's Trundle, where it's a lunge, when they get extra auto attack range, it doesn't work with those. So anyways, that's strong. And then just the amount of like sheer damage you can put out with these wounds, just spamming this on the same person, it's just such a huge amount of damage. And it gives you a very large heal, because you heal yourself against champions. Non-minion heal, minion heal. So the non-minion heal can be up to 16% of your missing health every like 5 seconds when you're hitting the same person. So it's pretty nasty. So that's why I think that going like a standard, you want to get Spirit Visage early, but getting like a Dead Man's Plate to get on people and then getting Spirit Visage. I mean, maybe it's just like Cinder Hulk, and then you make a call. You know, do you want Sterix or do you want Spirit Visage second? Maybe not Warmogs. I don't know. I'm not sure about Cleaver. I do feel like Sterix is going to be in there somewhere. So that's just too strong on an AD champion that also likes a lot of health. That's going to be getting Cinder Hulk. I don't think you would want stuff like Blade of the Ruined King on him. I mean, I'm sure the all caps videos will try. There is a cute effect here where critical strike modifiers do apply to this bonus damage. So if you had an Infinity Edge and you crit them with this Thundering Smash, I talked about this in the patch notes video, you could crit somebody for like 1,000 because the bonus damage could also crit, which is rare. They don't do that with a lot of abilities. But I still think that's just too cute. You don't want to be getting crit on him, I don't think. I mean, maybe you could do like a Phantom Dancer and just pray for that 25% crit, but I don't think you want to be doing things like Infinity Edge and all that stuff. So I think it's just going to be, you might even have the choice of just doing like Cinder Hulk, then your standard Deadman Spirit Visage, or you could do Cinder Hulk, Sterix Gauge. Either way, Spirit Visage obviously going to be a huge deal on him. You want to run Conquer as well. I'm almost positive he's going to be a Conqueror champ. And then Spirit Visage mix in there somewhere, and then you can decide if you want to do the Ravenous Hunter and try to make that work. And if you want better ganks with Deadmans, which I think is likely, especially because you can reset your Q, and you keep that movement speed. If they hit you and you have a Deadmans, it doesn't remove the speed. You have to auto-attack somebody to get a lower speed. So the fact that you can come running in super fast with your Q, you know, they CC you or whatever, you still keep the speed off of your Deadmans, and you can reset and keep the speed off of your Q. I think it's going to make him pretty vicious against a lot of champs that just have little chip pieces of CC. So yeah, I think he's going to be really strong right now. So I think his scaling is going to be through the roof. It's just so much damage once you get all of your, once you get your Frenzied Maul like maxed out at level 9. I think that's what you max first. I just feel like you're just going to be a healing, just like damage dealing machine, and it's going to be pretty difficult to kite you. To a certain extent. And then the Stormbringer also allows you to jump on that back line. So I think he's going to be pretty good. I think he's going to be fairly easy to play, so high reliability. In dueling, maybe not early game, maybe early game, I don't know. But definitely later on in the game, I think he's going to be able to beat a lot of people up in a duel. His clear speed, I think, is going to be okay. I don't know how fast. I haven't practiced him, but anyways, I think he's going to be really strong. He might be, I mean, you could make an argument maybe he's going to be the best jungler. I think he'll come in a little low. Usually new champions do, like 48% or something while people get used to him. Because there are some mechanics and things with him, some resets and, you know, just learning his limits, learning how far you can go before you die. All that stuff with all-in champions can be a little rough. But I do think by the end of this patch, by the end of 2 weeks, he's going to be a top 5 for sure. Okay. Graves is the next one. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with Graves. Anyone that watches pro scenes or a lot of the top level junglers is going to be familiar with Graves. What's making him really strong, and we talked about he does have a little nerf on his Q. I don't think that's going to matter too much. The biggest thing is the phase rush on Graves build that's out there right now just makes it so difficult to get a hold of him. So he can run you down and he can kite you really well. And the thing that makes him so strong is that grit right here, right? He can get up to 160 bonus armor. For those of you keeping track at home, that's like, I don't even know, 5,000 gold worth of health, maybe 4,000. Can't do the math off the top of my head. 3,200. Okay, so a little bit less. But still, 3,200 gold worth of free health means he doesn't have to stack, or free armor, means he doesn't have to buy any armor items. I mean, you can still buy Ninja Tabby if you want, but that frees you up to go Merc Treads, and that frees you up just to pretty much go either all damage or health and combination of damage. So usually you will get a Black Cleaver with him because each pellet on his buckshot does trigger, it doesn't trigger on hit effects, but it does trigger Cleaver if you read the little side notes here. So that's why people always go Cleaver, because when you shoot him in the face with Black Cleaver, it applies 4 stacks automatically, and then just kind of goes from there. I do think maybe Cleaver on volley will be kind of standard if he's tanky enough to deal with that. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it a little bit more. But yeah, he clears really fast. It's very safe. Every time you auto attack, it pushes the camps back, so it makes it very easy. You just have to get used to moving from one camp to the next, and then you keep your grid up so it doesn't fall off over like 4 seconds. And then if you can keep your grid up and time it really well to where you show up at the scuttle when you have your grit fully stacked and you start attacking the scuttle, and you keep that grit maxed, you can pretty much duel anybody. in the water, because even at an early level, if you have this grit stacked all the way up, it's going to be 64 armor, by like level 3 or level 4 when you're trying to fight the enemy, Lee Sin at the crab, you're going to slaughter him. So that's what's really strong about him. So he doesn't bring a lot of utility. He does have the smoke screen, which is okay. It's pretty much you just build him, a lot of damage most of the time, just trying to carry the game. And I think it's like Cleaver. He might go Death's Dance at some point. It's Warrior Cleaver's almost always his start. He can go Warrior into like Dustblade or Ghostblade or something like that. But he does scale pretty well later. I think probably like Cleaver, maybe. I think you can go a crit build too with him, like Phantom Dancer into like Infinity Edge. But there's a lot of different things you can build on him to be very strong. He can't do the Sterix, or I'm sure he would if he could, but he can't do that. Because that's only for melee champs. But either way, very good wave clear, very good scaling, excellent dueling, probably one of the best, like 1v1 if you want to go invade and fight the enemy jungler. He beats up a lot of other junglers. He is notably kind of weak to magic because, especially if he goes for the lethality build, so he doesn't get any magic resist off his grit. And his magic resist per level is fairly low, and he doesn't build a lot of magic items. He can get something like a Hex Drinker or a Maul Malmortius early on, but he really doesn't want to have to do that. So I think that's why he's going to fall a little bit. I think he's still going to be top tier, but like Fiddlesticks slaughters him. If you don't get in there and kill that Fiddlesticks in his jungle like multiple times in the early game, he is going to run you over late game, because you don't want to be buying things like Quicksilver Sash. You don't want to be buying things like Hex Drinker against Fiddlesticks. It just slows down your damage, and the problem is that's all he has, right? So if you have to stop and get a Hex Drinker, you're not doing damage anymore. It means you're not doing anything as Graves, right? You're built to be a hard carry, damage champ. The utility you have is so limited. You just have the Cleaver Shred and your smoke screen, and that's basically it. So if you're not doing your job, if you're not doing damage, you're basically not a champion. And Fiddlesticks or any other heavy AP champion like an Elise, Nidalee did get buffed fairly recently. She's still not that popular in lower elo, but in higher elo she's coming on a little bit. It just makes it very difficult to deal with those champs. And with how OP Fiddle's going to be, if you're going to pick Graves, you better ban Fiddle at lower elo brackets. And that's kind of reflected in his win rate. Like, he is very popular, but his win rate's not like super high. It's okay. But, I think the meta might be shifting a little bit in some cases away from him if we start seeing more of these magic damage dealers out there. I mean, even something like a Nunu, if Nunu grabs like a Leandries or something later on in the game, could be a little difficult for Graves to deal with. So, I think. I mean, once again, like a challenger level Graves, maybe not, but Fiddlesticks definitely a huge problem. I think didn't Eve get a buff like a patch or two ago? We're still not seeing her that much, but anyways, that's great. Very strong, very good against what has been the meta so far with, great matchup into Olaf. I think pretty good matchup into Trundle, and things of that nature, but there may be a reckoning. Also, Shyvana's becoming a bit more popular. I know some high elo players are pushing her. People have figured out Ignite's good on Shyvana to run as a secondary. I've been doing that for weeks. The AP Shyvana build especially is becoming pretty popular, and later on can be a pretty good answer to Graves, because he does have some lifesteal, but it can definitely bust him up once she gets her pin items. So anyways, Graves gonna be pretty good right now. Just Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Absolute Focus, Water Walking, and then Triumphant Alacrity. Then his Warrior Cleaver, Death's Dance, Maud Malmortius, or Phantom Dancer, or Edge of Night. So he's got a lot of different builds he can do. Warwick's still gonna be pretty strong, and I know we've only got like 7 minutes left, so I'm gonna go. I always say that, we're gonna do this quick, and I know it never is. But Warwick still pretty serviceable. Has a high win rate in solo queue as always, kind of like Nunu. He's almost always a top 5. Just really good in lower elo brackets. People just running around, always getting low on health. Gives him a lot of extra movement speed through the jungle. Does have pretty good pieces of CC with his E and his R, so he's got nice disruption in fights. Surprisingly pretty tanky. You can catch people off guard with the healing, especially on his ult. Pretty good itemization. It is a little awkward, like, when you have Cinderhulk Tiamat, like, you do clear, like, pretty quickly, but you don't do a ton of damage. So he's just kind of like, almost like a utility, like, just health stack tank. But Titanic, once you get it completed, is very strong, because each one of your auto attacks on your ult does apply Titanic. So it hits not only the main person that you ulted, but it also will splash and hit everyone behind that person. So he is very, very good in team fights. So it's just almost always going to be just Cinderhulk, Titanic, Spirit Visage if you can help it. And then later on, you can go for, just some kind of armor item, either Thorn Mail or Dead Man's Plate or whatever, depending on if you want more, if you want the Grievous Wounds and survivability, or depending on if you want the movement speed off of Dead Man's. So, pretty good champion overall. I still think he's going to be strong, especially at gold and lower. Olaf, still going to be a strong champ. He's sort of probably the most... Graves and Olaf are probably the two most popular champs in Challenger. You see a lot of the top-end challengers spamming them a lot. Olaf has a really fast clear. He's excellent at dueling, so very good one-on-one. Has problems against Graves. If you like to play Olaf, I would say ban Graves, most likely. And he can just really get in there and fight and duel other tanks, basically, in the late game. You can get through all of their CC, and just with all of your true damage, and he just has just an immense amount of damage. If you sit there and just go toe-to-toe with him, if you don't kite him, he can definitely bust you up, because he has that true damage and just attacks really, really fast. So I think Olaf's really good. Most people typically will go Cinderhulk with him, and then Black Cleaver. You need the Cleaver so that you can get a little bit of that armor shred in that, but you also just need the Phage so you can stick to people a bit easier. I think Death's Dance is really good on him. A lot of other people won't run Death's Dance as much. People might just do like Conquer, Spirit Visage, after Cleaver, that type of stuff. I mean, maybe Death's Dance is just overkill because you're already healing so much, especially with Conqueror, but he just gets in there, gets it done, does a ton of damage. So the big thing there is he's unstoppable. He's great against a bunch of CC teams, and he can fight really well early on if you just really want to pressure the enemy jungler. Trundle's another one. He did get a nerf a couple of patches ago on his ult timer, but he's still going to be really good, especially in professional play. Now, most people are just going to build him Cinderhulk into like tanky utility items. So it's very common to see like a Knight's Vow on him as a rush. So like Cinderhulk, Knight's Vow. And the main reason for that is when you have your W active, then the healing that you get off of Knight's Vow, so like if your ADC is doing a bunch of damage, is also increased by the 25% off of your W. So you get healed a lot for that. So that's kind of the synergy there. And then some people are doing Frozen Heart. I know I was kind of critiquing Frozen Heart earlier with Cinderhulk. It is kind of a nombo, but on Trundle, it does make a little bit more sense because you're already stealing quite a bit of health and resistances with your R. And you're going to be up in people's face, like, really close. So that's a possibility, and the fights are usually going to last a little bit longer. He just doesn't have any extra special scaling with health, unlike Nunu. You do have Cinderhulk, but Nunu also has his Q, he also has his R, and it's the same way with Warwick. Like, he heals a certain percentage of his missing health, or his max health, one of the two, I don't remember, but it's based on his health for his Q and his R, so he wants a lot of max health, versus Trundle doesn't have that, so it gives you the luxury of going into something like a Frozen Heart if you want to. You could even go with Zeke's on Trundle, that will allow him to stick to people a little bit easier, and does put out a lot of extra damage for you personally, and gives a lot of extra damage to your AD carry. So if you have like an Enchanter support that's not going to be getting Zeke's, then getting a Zeke's on Trundle can be good. So he can kind of cheat the curve, get these utility items if he wants to in the early game, just because he's naturally going to be very tanky with his R. He's going to be fast. You can also go for some more carry stuff if you want to. I know that Tarzan was talking about maybe trying out Blade the Ruined King on him. He does get 100% extra attack speed while he's on his W. You do have an auto attack reset with your Q. Your W does give you a lot of extra healing, so that does synergize really well with Blade the Ruined King. If you do take Ravenous Hunter, that also increases the healing off of the Blade the Ruined King damage. So I'll have to try that out. That could be really good. A lot of people have done like Trinity Force in the past at lower elos, Cinderhulk and a Trinity, but we already talked about kind of the problem with that a bit. Earlier on, we were talking about Hecarim. So Blade the Ruined King is a little bit cheaper, and just has like just raw damage. Just has the the attack speed, the AD, and just the damage on auto attacks. I just think it generates a lot more damage right now than Trinity does in most cases. Trinity is better at taking towers, but Blade the Ruined King is cheaper and just a lot more concentrated on tripling down on your auto attack damage. So yeah, I think Trundle's really good. Great against tanks. He's going to be probably a decent answer against Volibear. Pretty good answer against very good answer against Nunu, because you stop his snowball with your pillar and you take all of his stuff. So anyone that runs blanking on the rune's name there, Aftershock, you can steal their stats off of that, and then once it falls off after 2.5 seconds, they almost always go negative in stats. So Trundle's just a very good anti-tank champ, and I think that tanks are really going to be the best thing that's going on a lot of the time at gold and lower, with the exception of Fiddlesticks and maybe Graves. Even Graves, you can take a lot of his armor as well with that grit, and if that grit ever falls off in combat or anything, it probably won't, but he could be in trouble there. So I think Trundle's going to be strong. Press the attack is good if you're just trying to be a team player, because it applies that debuff so that the rest of your team does 12% extra damage. So that's a really nice utility team buff type of thing. But then if you want to go Conqueror, that can be really good as well, particularly if you're going Blade of the Ruined King. Conqueror can be pretty nice just because the extra lifesteal is going to apply off of the Blade of the Ruined King damage as well. So that's pretty good, especially if you're not going to get kited. That Blade of the Ruined King build might be pretty good. Well, it looks like we're going to go over an hour, but whatever. We'll just keep going. Wukong, I haven't seen him a lot. He was nerfed recently. I think he can be good early. His ganks, it's kind of hard to get him off pre-6. He doesn't have a lot of CC. By a lot, I mean like any. But you can hard carry with him later on. He's kind of a hybrid tank, like carry sort of jungler. So he's sort of like Graves, but has a bit more team fight presence later on. Has a bit more CC. Once he gets his ult, obviously it's 2 really good pieces of CC because you can ult twice. So he does transition into like a decent utility tank. You can apply Black Cleaver really fast as well with him. And he does a lot of damage. So I haven't really tried him out. I did end up buying him but never trying him. So maybe I'll try him out on stream tonight. He does have a really high win rate. He is excellent at team fights. So, I mean, maybe consider him a little bit more. He is good against other AD champs because he does get a lot of free armor, I think, off his passive. I don't think he gets magic resist, though, so Fiddlesticks is still going to have a heyday with him, but pretty good champion overall. So yeah, just your standard bruiser items, I think, on him is probably just going to be Warrior into Cleaver into either Death Dance or Sterix or something like that, depending on what you need. Okay, Shyvana. So there are a couple different Shyvana builds. I've been liking the on-hit Shyvana build where I rush Blade of the Ruined King on him. You just skip your... you get your Skirmisher Saber, but you skip the rest of it, and you just rush Blade of the Ruined King as fast as you can. The reason that's so good on Shyvana is because when you auto-attack and then Q, it procs Blade 3 times. So your Q procs on hits twice. So that's a triple hit of Blade of the Ruined King. She's a melee champion. That's 36% of their current health. So she just completely shreds people if they just sit on you with that. She has really fast wave clear, and she can stack up Conquer really well because every single one of her abilities does damage. I don't think that the Blade of the Ruined King stacks Conquer faster, the damage off a blade. But anyway, she stacks up Conquer like super fast. You can take Ignite on her, which is something that, like I said, Tarzan was trying out earlier. I've been running that on Shyvana for a while. Main reason is, like, your ult is up so often. You can get out of scary situations, and you don't really need to flash. I mean, what are you going to do with your flash? You're going to flash and auto-attack him? You know, you don't really need the flash that much on Shyvana. It's not like Fiddlesticks where you can make a play with, like, an ult flash or a flash fear, or something like that, right? It's strictly just a luxury that people just do automatically, but the Ignite does make it a lot better early on. She's notorious for having terrible ganks. But if you just roll up and if you just have an Ignite's like 200 or 300 true damage in the early game. It's just a crazy amount of damage. And then, you know, you just run up with your W and just auto-attack them down with red buff. Like, maybe that's enough, you know, to kill them. Especially if you gank a lane that already has a lot of CC where they just need a bit more damage just to push them over the edge. Like, you're ganking bot lane and they have a Leona or a Nautilus or something and they have the CC, they just need the damage. You can just roll up with Ignite and make those plays happen. So... especially once you get your blue Skirmisher Saber, you can actually gank fairly well in the early game. So that is one option, Blade of the Ruined King into just a bunch of hybrid or tank stuff. You can do Death Dance or even Spirit Visage. If you have Blade of the Ruined King plus Conquer, that's a lot of healing. And Ravenous Hunter, which is nice on her. You know, you can just go into Spirit Visage with her as well. So I think that kind of the on-hit hybrid can be good if they don't have a ton of kiting. You can jump onto that backline with your ult. And get there, kind of similar to Volibear, but she doesn't have as many defensive capabilities as Volibear does, so she's okay. So it's basically, you know, the thought process with Shyvana is she farms faster than almost anybody. She has so much power, so much mobility, so you can show up for counter ganks, you can push side lanes and rotate to get back to your team. Just with that much farm and that much mobility and that much raw damage, there has to be something you can do with that champion to make her strong. So I think the on-hit's pretty good, especially in lower brackets, but AP also works on her. It basically turns her E into almost a one-shot mechanic. People have been calling her the New Age Karthus because you just power farm. You don't gank that well, but whatever. And then just late game, you just one-shot people. So that's a pretty good build too. That's what a lot of the challengers who play her, that's why they're playing her, is because she has a super long-range AP threat, and it's very difficult to deal with that if they hit the E's. And the E gets a bigger hitbox the more points in E that you have, or the more points in your ult that you have. So, anyways, very good AP champion, farms super well. If you're going for the AP build, you would just want to go for Runic Echoes into double pen, and then off of double pen, you probably just get a Morellonomicon, and then just feel it out from there. You know, either Death Cap or Void Staff, or whatever AP items you need. Okay, and then the last few champions, Master Yi, not much to say here. Everyone's familiar with him. It's the same old build as usual. You get your Blood Razor into Gensu's, and then pick either Wit's End or Blade the Rune King. Then you can solo bear, and if you do that, you just blow people up. So you hard farm early. Your ganks are kind of weak, but if you show up, you clean some stuff up. You do really well with the gold, and it's just very difficult to deal with him once he's really fed. His Alpha Strike makes him untargetable. He does a ton of damage. He can 1v1 people. He can split push side lanes. He can clean up team fights. So he can kind of do it all. So once he gets those 3 items, he definitely is a menace. But, I do think that his worst case scenarios, which is kind of like Graves, he just doesn't do anything. He doesn't have any CC. If you're behind, you're just pretty much worthless. All he brings is pure damage, but he can't even go duel the other enemy jungle. So unlike Graves, who can go fight the enemy jungler, he can't fight. He just kind of has to hide and just sort of sneak in, some CS, sneak in a couple of ganks whenever he can get it. So I think he's just kind of like a worse version of Graves, although the best case scenario, you get like 6 kills or something. He's more unstoppable than Graves is probably. So he's just even more risky, even more all-in, even more hard carry potential than someone like Graves, but a lot more risk as well. When you have stuff like Fiddlesticks running around, who can just fear you, he's kind of like Graves, doesn't want to build a QSS, does not want to build a Hex Drinker because you don't have any utilities. You can't get luxury items. You have to get the damage items, or you're just not going to be able to function. You have to be able to get those resets. So, yeah, that's why I have him down there. So, like, the best case scenario is very strong. I know there's at least one person or a couple of people that always talk about Master Yi on the channel. And why, I don't play him or why I don't rate him a bit higher. It's just he's just too risky. I think he is super good in his best case scenario. I think he's OP. I do ban him a lot when I play Nunu because he's immune to slows whenever he does his ult, and a lot of Nunu's effectiveness are his slows, and he is very good in the tanks if they don't CC him to death. So there are certain champs where I think he's a bit on the strong side, certain matchups, but he's really good in a Trundle too because Trundle doesn't have a lot of slows, doesn't have a lot of CC, but I don't know. He is very good. He's just very risky. Then the last few, Zac, good engage tank, a little bit slow early on. His ganks can be a little clunky. If they're pushing into you, if you can jump over your allied walls and you land your E, he's very good. You have to land that E. It's a skill shot. You can miss it. It can be tricky. But if you do land that E, he has some of the best backline access and disruption. If you E onto that backline in a team fight and then his pressure ult and disrupt everybody, that can be very good. Stacks a ton of health, very good against like assassins or just champions that are really ability dependent. If you can just soak that ability damage, they don't have much left in the tank, you can just, outlive them. The problem is, I think that style of play, I feel like Fiddlesticks is just better at that because he's just going to kill him, right? Like, if you have good vision control, if you're able to jump around walls like that, then if you just have Fiddlesticks, why not just kill everybody instead? And Fiddlesticks wants to run around and hide and farm up early too, kind of like Zac. So Zac is tanky, but, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. They can't kill you if they're dead. So I just think Fiddlesticks has kind of supplanted Zac as far as, like, if you want that, someone who gets vision and jumps around stuff and gets on the back line. Volibear might also take that throne as well if you want a tank version that just runs up and jumps on the back line. We'll see. So I think Zac is very good. I think he's actually pretty good into Fiddlesticks. It's like Vision Wars. Who's going to get the jump on whom? But he could be a decent matchup. Kha'Zix and Rengar are both like one-trick assassin champions. If you snowball early and get ahead, you can hard 1v9 games. So they are very strong. They're kind of like Graves and Master Yi, but I think they're a lot harder to play than either one of those. But if you're a challenger, smurfing down in gold, or you're like a Kha'Zix one-trick, they can be extremely powerful. If you, learn their positioning and just learn their limits and do it to the max, they can be good. So they're good like YouTube highlight reel champs, but a lot of players just aren't going to be able to use them optimally. but they are very, very good if you put the time into learning them. Shaco, basically the same deal as well. Shaco usually has a bit of a higher win rate than the other two. Yeah, I hear. Just because he has a better early game. Like, you can early game, and then that gives you the gold to get your snowball going, versus Rengar, like, you can do stuff early game. If you get some lane ganks on your top of your bot lane and really utilize those bushes well, like, you can get some kills early, but it's pretty much you're a level 6 champion. And then Kha'Zix is sort of the same. I mean, you can make stuff happen in the early game if you want to, but I think Shaco is better at making that happen because you do have, like, very creative gank paths. And it is really hard to run away from Shaco, and he does do quite a bit of damage. So Shaco is, like, super one-trick. You have to definitely commit to Shaco because there are all sorts of weird little tricks you can do with him, like using your ult to become invulnerable for, like, half a second or something. Using your clone really well, just positioning in fights, and then you have the options of going AD or AP. I think most people go AD these days, but AP is probably still viable. So, anyways, I think Shaco is very good, especially at gold and lower. Now, if we're talking challenger players, once again, if you had to pick an assassin, it'd probably be either Rengar or Kha'Zix. But at gold and lower, I think Shaco is still going to be pretty good. And then Ivern is someone who's been creeping up a little bit lately. I saw a game that was completely taken over by an Ivern that I played in. I took over a game as Ivern that I played, but I feel like he is kind of situational. He can actually turbo gank early, because while you're waiting on your camps, you just do, like, a really quick early clear, and then you get mobility boots. And just get out there and just chain gank over and over and over again while you're waiting on your camps. Roll up, grab your camps real quick, go back to chain ganking. So if you have lanes that are very good with ganks, great gank assists, like you have top lane Darius or something, or bot lane Leona, mid lane Malzahar, just all kinds of stuff that has, like, really good potential for your ganks, he can be very good. And he's great if you have tanks on your team. So if you have, especially the tank support's very important, the Leona or the Nautilus, because if they have an enchanter support, not only is your team likely going to be squishier, but they're going to get the same items as you. They're going to have Ardent Censer, they're going to have Redemption, and those items are okay if multiple people have them, but you do lose a lot of value if there's already an enchanter that's building, those kind of utility items. So it works a lot better with tank supports. And if you have a tank, like a tank E, at least type of champion top, even like a Garen, a Darius, a Seth, there's a lot of them out there right now. That's going to be good. So it doesn't have to be Ornn, but just something where there's, like, good value in shielding that person. They're going to have some armor or magic resist in their build. He's going to be very good. So I think he has a ton of potential. He's kind of like almost... It's hard to compare him to anything, but he's kind of like a Janna of the jungle or something like that, or a Lulu of the jungle. He just does have a lot of sort of tankiness, or not tankiness, but like CC and the ability to keep your team alive a lot. So he's a weird champion. He does kind of require some one-tricking, but I think just it doesn't take as long to get used to him. You just have to get his pathing down in the early game. So he's another one that does not want to fight early. The main difference between, like, Ivern and another utility champ like a Nunu, someone said on stream the other day, well, you like support so much, why don't you play Ivern in the jungle? It's like, well, I like playing Ivern, but Nunu is also kind of support jungler, because you can get those support items that I mentioned before. But the thing is, like, Nunu's just a lot safer, like, and Nunu can actually take objectives. Ivern is not. It's going to take him forever to do solo dragons or Rift Heralds or to go push a side lane or whatever. He can't do that. So he does have a lot of, and he takes towers really slowly. So he does have a lot of potential. He does provide the shielding and healing and all that kind of stuff. And I do like him, and I do think that he can be very strong. I think he's very underrated right now. But I think he's very situational. I think you have to have the right kind of stuff on your team to make him work. Most notably, tank support, and if you have a tank top, that helps out as well. So yeah, he can be pretty good also. And then the final few honorable mentions here. Lee Sin, if you're a god on him, he can be good. Kindred, if you one-trick her, if you're able to bully people out early and establish dominance and get your marks, she can be good. Udyr, surprisingly, is quite good at gold and lower. I think that going, like, Warrior Trinity Udyr can be good. I've been trying out Ghostblade, but I think that might just be too much movement speed. Like, you're just getting capped on movement speed at that point. So maybe just doing Trinity, and Trinity does help you take towers faster. Now, higher end Udyrs, like Top Diamond or like Master Udyrs, are going to be going like Cinderholt, Sterix, like tanky utility type of stuff. But Udyr's just, like, really good, like, just a gank machine early, and he actually can duel and fight. Like, he can beat up a lot of other champs if you get some AD early, because that Tiger Strike does a ton of AD. So he's a pretty good counter to things like Master Yi, where you want to have the speed and the mobility to go in there, invade, and just bust him up. Or some of these other, like, I mean, he might even be okay against Fiddlesticks early on in the game, but he can definitely fight a lot of enemy champs and do very well in the early game. Echo is okay. It's hard to get a feel on him. There's a lot of counterplay to Echo if you just stay out of his stun. I think he takes a little while and several items to come online, but if you're an Echo God, you can make him work in the jungle. I just think his clear is a bit slower. He takes a little bit longer to come online. He can get out-dueled and beaten up. But if you are a God on him, then you can make him work. Elise, very good challenger level jungler. If you really use her ability to dive early, you're hitting all of your combos, you know all of her little like tricks of the trade. She can be pretty good, but she falls off pretty hard late game if you're not ahead. Vi farms well, has very good ganks, pretty simple to play, just press R, blow people up. She does start to fall off a bit late game when you can no longer one-shot people. A lot of people just go Warrior, Trinity, Tank. When you have the Warrior and the Trinity, she can use that really well. I guess Rek'Sai is another one I didn't put on here. Jungle's just so diverse right now, honestly. There's a lot of stuff that can work. Rek'Sai is another one of those, like, challenger level, very good junglers. If you can, like, turbo gank and get ahead early. Mundo's another one I've been looking at, and he did have a pretty high win rate for a bit there. It did fall a little bit over the next couple of patches, but especially against Fiddlesticks, I think he can work. He does have a lot of magic resist, but the problem is he just doesn't have a lot of CC, so he is very tanky. You don't have a lot of CC, and if Fiddlesticks is just getting good ults off on your team, like, there's not a lot you can do about that, right? You can't peel him. You can try to get vision of him, but, you know, he's just difficult to disrupt. So, I don't know. I might retire the Mundo, but I think that in theory, he can be very good against Fiddle if you have a team to back him up and you're able to get ahead early and push your advantage. Because if they jump on you and you're Mundo and you have, like, Spirit Visage and Cinder Hulk, like, Fiddlesticks is probably not going to kill you because you get 40% extra magic resist. Off of your E passive. But he's just kind of situational. Sylas can be good in the jungle. I think he has a pretty low win rate overall, but if you're a God Sylas player, godlike Sylas player, you can make him work. And then Kai'Sa is kind of my specialty one that I talked about a lot on the patch notes. I talked about it earlier on in this video. I think if you can go for like Warrior, Blatherin, King and get your Q transformed early, I think that she can potentially do pretty well in the jungle, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you very much. As always, I really appreciate it. Be sure to come by, check out the stream starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most nights, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.